Hey there and welcome. I'm Cindy Daychuk with Queen Bee Creations and thank you so much for joining me today. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. If you have not, then I would love it if you do that. Keeps me able to come at you twice a week, Mondays and Fridays for sure, if not sometimes extra and bonus videos. And yeah, I have too much fun doing this, so I'd love if you come along for the journey with me. Today, I got this decanter at the thrift store, and I was looking for something that was like this. I mean, obviously it's not crystal, it's, you know, it's got a little bit of, you know, it's pressed glass. You can see the seam coming up there, and it's got this engraved wheat pattern on it. But I have wanted to do what I call an I Dream of Jeannie bottle. So I'm from the generation of that. But really what we're looking at doing is putting molds all over this, decorating it up. And then I want to paint it fairly bold. I kind of want to go a little bit, a little boho with it. So what I have done is I have grabbed a mess of molds. So I've got tons of my IOD molds and trimmings molds and all that kind of stuff. I have old fondant molds because they work perfectly well too. What I didn't do is bring like the butterflies and the birds and the, you know, flowers and that sort of thing. So I've got more the architectural detail kind of molds on this. And I have my IOD air dried clay. And as always, you can get the molds and the clay on the website, queenbeecreationshome.com. But, you know, I'm a big advocate of use what you got. So what I am looking at doing is covering this sucker in all kinds of molding, make it really detailed and interesting, and then we'll look at painting it out and having fun with that, and maybe some gilding, and I don't know, just we're having fun together. So to start, I'm looking at maybe wanting to kind of do something that takes advantage of this kind of shape. So you can see that it does go wider down here, but it's really this neck part. So maybe pulling that a little bit heavier up there. So I'm looking for what I got that might work. Okay, I have this one really heavily detailed. This is a fondant mold, but you know, the IOD molds work for fondant. Fondant molds could work for the IOD. You know, it's all the same. This is pretty deep and pretty detailed though. So I am thinking I better go break out my cornstarch. Got my little container of cornstarch here at the shop. Nothing fancy, obviously. But what it does do, and I've just got a little paintbrush to kind of paint the insides, is it just helps, especially if you're using a detailed mold, it just helps to release your clay from there. And you know, by the time that you've pushed it all in and you've gotten all those details, you want to keep them. So we're just going to be taking some of this clay, and it's freezing in my shop, as you can tell, since I am wearing as many clothes as I happen to have hanging out here. So I'm just going to warm it up slightly, and I have my wood glue. You could use, so I've got Type 1-3 here. You could use any wood glue. You could use your white craft glue. You could use E6000. I mean, whatever is going to allow it to adhere on, but it really sticks quite well even onto glass. So all that we're going to be doing is taking that clay, and I will say the fondant molds are a little bit more difficult to use than the IOD molds are. Just because the IOD has, it's a little firmer, so it's not quite as squishy as this. And it's got a micro rim around the outside of all your designs, so that when you're pushing your clay in, you can actually push it against that micro rim, and it helps kind of cut off your clay and give you a really nice crisp edging and image. And it's a little bit tougher to do that with these because it squishes in a little bit too easily. There's nothing that chops it off, so sometimes you just have to really be a lot more careful with these to try and get some of the edging details. So you can use them, but if you are just starting out and you are looking at investing in molds, and it's going to be predominantly for you know, like your clays, your air dried clays and those sorts of things, then I would recommend the IOD over anything else. But you know, if you're at a garage sale and or you're thrifting and you find a mess of these, oh, I pick them up too. So, you know, I have a preference, but I don't have anything against using what you find. All right, so when we've got it in our mold, so whichever mold we're using, flip it over and then slowly kind of peel that mold back. So you're kind of teasing it out a little bit. So if there's anything that sticks, you're able to deal with that. But look at how, whoa, look at how lovely that is. So nice and detailed. And I'm just thinking that if I'm sticking those, 4 of them around the outside of that would be lovely. So I want to get at least 2 of them done right now. And you'll see that I put my clay away in my plastic bag between uses because we don't want it to dry out. What I'm looking at doing here is I am definitely going to do 4 of those around the circumference of this upper area. And I'm thinking I'm going to do them this way, kind of that top heavy and then leaning down. So what I do have is I have my glue, and you want to make sure with the glue that you get it right out to all those little edges, because otherwise as the clay is drying, it's going to want to pull away from your surface, and you'll end up with, you know, maybe some of those outside edges being raised slightly. So one of the things that I do is as it's drying, I tend to keep going back to my piece and just kind of helping reshape it to my surface a little bit before, you know, because it's only going to happen during those beginning stages, and just kind of reshaping it, making sure that it's sticking there. Now, because I'm going to be sticking this onto a slick surface, glass, and it's vertical. I mean, if I was gluing it down to a board and the board is flat, this next part is not an issue. But because I'm going to be gluing it onto a surface like this, where it is upright, which may be like a big dresser if you were doing that with molds, then your molds, until the glue starts to thicken up enough and to harden, they're going to have a tendency to slide down your piece, in which case we're going to use some painter's tape. And I just use this to be able to hold it in place during, I'm just kind of getting them ready off to the side. So just during that initial dry time. Okay, so I'm just going to stick this one on, and I'm kind of curving it down. And I just want to check it out. See where it's going. And already it's wanting to slide. If I didn't have my finger on it, that baby would be taking off on me. So you're just kind of gluing it down enough to hold it in place. Okay? And you can see that upper part wants to raise, and I just keep pushing it down. And as that glue starts to thicken up, that'll help hold it down in place too. But as I'm looking through it, I can see maybe it looks a little crooked. Okay, so I'm gonna do the other one on the other side, attempting to get it lined up and level with that first one. And just looking down helps me center it a little bit better. I had it way, way off center there. Okay. And I lost another piece of tape. And as it slides around, you know what, just kind of wipe off some of that excess glue. But because we're going to be painting the entire bottle, don't agonize over any of that excess glue that's hanging out over your piece, because we're going to be painting over that and you're not going to see it. Okay, now I am going to want to do two more, one on this side, one on this side. So if we have the north-south, we're going to add the east-west, but I'm going to let these firm up before I do that. So what I can do is start working on other elements of the design and just kind of get those going. So kind of think of it like a two-parter maybe. And I did see, oh Lord, it's on this again. Okay. I just like those little beads that go from big to little. And I have them on this, but they're very long and I don't want them that long. I'm thinking of that little shape just coming down from the top all the way around, sort of that ongoing beading. So, and already, just as I've been talking to you, I can feel the clay crusting over on the top, so it's already drying up. So I'm just carrying on in another spot. And this is in essence all that we're doing. We are just making our molds, picking little designs, figuring out where we want to glue them, gluing them in place, and continuing on. And if I need to anchor something, and you're gonna find like this, noisy neighbors, like this little mold is so tiny that I'm likely not going to need to tape it in place because it doesn't have as much weight to pull down on. These are a lot of clay, so they're pulling, you know, using, like gravity's kicking in, and it's taking it out. These little beads, I'm thinking of putting all the way around that upper piece, which, you know, when I go to do some gold gilding and stuff, they're gonna look super cute. So I'm gonna carry on doing all those little pieces around there, and then maybe I'll have a chance at that point to be able to get those next pieces on. and then we'll start seeing what else we're gonna add to it. But you just keep looking at your molds, looking at the shapes, looking at the bottle, and getting all those molds done and glued on and dried. All right, this is my bottle with all of my molds on it. Now, technically, I could start painting this now, but you'd have to be gentle, making sure that you're not pushing onto the molds, and I just prefer to give it the day, give it the night to be all dried up, firmed up, you know, let it do its thing. So, I'm gonna let this sit before we would start painting, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how much I did. You can see I did a little bit onto the knob, just to give it a little bit more weight because it was looking a little light with everything happening down here. But I love this detail in here. I didn't mess with that. And I think that the neck is gonna be cool with it swooping out. So, I'm gonna set it aside to dry. All of that, I had, this was already an open pack. I definitely still have half left. So it took a little bit less than half of a package of the air dried clay, just to give you an idea of what was needed. And then I will pop this away so it does not dry out. And I'm done with this for the day. I just need it to dry so that we can move on with the painting and the coloring and the gilding and all the fun stuff. So it looks cool so far. So kind of fun, and you're kind of reshaping it, redefining the look and the purpose. So that's kind of cool too. So we'll get back at this once it's dry. Our molds have all dried. I'm going to take this out so it doesn't keep rattling around. But our molds have all dried. Nothing raised up, nothing shifted horrendously. So it means that we're ready to start painting. The first thing that I want to do is just get a really kind of just neutral base coat on. So what I'm going to start with is Crinoline by DIY. So DIY paint, being a clay-based paint, sticks really well to even glass. If you were using a different paint, maybe a chalk paint or whatever your preferred paint is, and you were worried about whether it's going to stick to the glass, then you could put, like just spray it all over with a sealer or basic primer or something first. But I don't have to. So all that we're going to do for this coat is as simple as getting it on, getting everything covered, and letting it dry. The next coat, we can start adding color to it and getting things blending. But this is all you're doing. I've got 2 coats of our crinoline on, and I did the bottom as well. And now it's time to start getting some color on this. I want to kind of go bright, so you could go subtle. You paint it how you want. I'm gonna give it a try on making it kind of bold, kind of funky, little bohemian. So I have on my tray here, I have Old 57, I have Mermaid Tail, Queen Bee, Mint Chip, Kissing Booth, and I've got Beadboard White over here, and I'm just gonna see how it goes. Now, I am thinking of coloring up some waxes. I am looking at doing some gold gilding. You know, there'll be more coming. But what I am looking at is kind of hitting it with some basic color first, and then starting to add in more. trying to do a little blending on the piece, and we'll see how it goes. So we're just playing. Now, I gave the base paint enough time to dry on the bottle because again, it's a slick surface. So even when I'm painting now, you know, I want to get the paint on, but I don't want to work it crazy amounts because I don't want to reactivate the paint below it and have that starting to pull away. Okay, so I got a little bit of that on. I'm going to grab another paintbrush and I'm going to my Kissing Booth. Now, Kissing Booth is a pink and it's very strong. It's very pigmented. So we'll see how this goes. Okay. I maybe should have brought over more paintbrushes. All right, because I want to get, all right, let me get rid of my pink on here. I just want to get a bit of my Queen Bee on here. Just a little bit of that yellow. Is it looking like a hot mess yet, guys? Are you with me? Okay, gang, this is what my bottle looks like right now. Not very attractive, but we're not done yet. Okay, we just want to put a quick seal on this. I've got some Rust-Oleum clear gloss. We're just covering this over before we put our next layer of paint on. And this is because we want to distress back to this. I know it looks bad right now, just, you know, trust me gang. So I just want to lightly coat this. I'm gonna let this coat dry and then I'll flip it over and I'll do the underside, the bottom of it. But I just want to be able to, this is what I've got my little lid sitting on. Just something that prevents me from distressing back to the original clay or to the glass itself. So I'm just going to let that sit, let it dry, flip it over, do the bottom, and then when it's dry, we'll come back and we'll put our next coats on. Last step for today, and then I'll let it dry, is we're going to cover the entire thing in petticoat pink. So I'm just gonna get the whole thing covered over. And I am going to be distressing, so I'm not worried about perfect coverage. But we are going all over pink. Now that our bottle has dried, we are going to do a little bit of wet distressing. So you could use a damp paper towel, a damp white cotton cloth. You can use some wet wipes, but we sprayed it just lightly with that one sealer, and that's going to help us be able to distress back to our paint without disturbing it and ending up distressing back to our glass. So you're just going to take your damp rag and you are going to just kind of rub over any of the areas, and here we're probably talking the highs. So any of the high areas to reveal some of those colors that we laid down. You know, our Queen Bee, our Kissing Booth, our Old 57. So we're gonna have our turquoises and our reds and our yellows starting to pop through. And we're just gonna do this over the whole bottle until we've revealed as much as we would like. Now, if you decide later that you revealed too much, just take some more of your petticoat pink or whatever your top coat color was and paint that area again. Let it dry and then distress again. So don't think you're locked into anything that you do. A little paint is gonna fix it again anyway. So I'm just gonna carry on doing my distressing, getting it as distressed as I want, and then I'm gonna let it dry because we've reactivated some of that paint. So I'm gonna wanna let it dry, and then we're gonna come back together again because we get to seal it and then continue on with adding a little bit more color and some bling, and so we're gonna intensify some of it after. So get this done, get it dried, and then we'll be back. Now that our bottle is dry, it's time for us to seal and add more to it. So this is where we're at right now, but it's still not where I want it. So I'm kind of playing, and we'll see where it goes. But right now I have clear DIY wax. I have some dark wax off to the side. I have some decrepit dust. I have some purple pigment powder. I have some golden rule. I may get white wax. We'll see where this goes. So the first thing that I want to do is kind of really see what I'm working with here. And that's where the clear wax is going to not just seal my piece, but it's going to bring out the color. So you can see pale pink, too much darker, a little bit more vibrant colors here. And so it's going to give me a better idea of what we're working with color-wise, but it's also going to protect the colors that I've already laid down. Normally at this point in a piece, after I've waxed a piece, I would look at wiping that wax back. I'm not looking to do that right now. I want the wax to be on there. Now, this is a pigment powder from DIY, very intensive color. I haven't had a chance to use them yet, so I was a little excited to say, you know what? Let's add some purple. Let's add some purple. And you can use this powder in a number of different ways. You can add it to your paint. So if you had white paint, you could add this, make it purple. You could take your pink paint. This is getting to be a tongue twister. Get your pink paint, add a little more purple. So you can change up, you can color mix, you could add it to your red to make a little bit more vibrant color, however you want to do it. What we're going to be doing today is in essence adding it to our piece. Now I've got a bunch that's stuck to the lid. I'm going to be adding it to my wet wax. And that goes a long way. So you can see how rarely I'm dipping, but I'm kind of trying to put it a little bit into some of those lows. And can you see the purple that it's added in there? So there isn't formally a intense purple in the DIY line. So this pigment powder adds a lot of flexibility with your pieces. So I'm just kind of going around in the cracks a little bit, taking that purple quite a long way. You can see that I haven't added any back in. But we're just kind of taking it a little bit further, making this even more colorful. So now I'm going to take a dry cloth and I'm going to wipe back a little bit. So what you can see is that purple sitting down in those cracks a little bit, right? And it's made the pink a little bit pinker, you know, where it goes. Okay, I am going to carry on doing exactly that, dropping that purple down into those areas, taking a dry cloth and just wiping it back a little bit so it's sitting down in there a bit. Just kind of accenting some of those edges, sitting down in, adding a little bit more color. Okay, I would like this to look a little bit more old and crusty. So I'm going to add some decrepit dust. And I'm going to use it the same way that I did the purple. And in fact, I'm just going to use the same little brush. So I'm just going to pour out the tiniest bit into the lid. Again, this goes very far. And if you've used the dark and decrepit liquid patina, you're going to use this kind of similarly. But what I'm looking at doing is just kind of working it down into some of those crevices and just darkening it up a bit in some spots. So it's just kind of aging it out a little bit, creating a little bit of a shadowing effect. And you can see how far that's really going. So can you see as I look at this one versus this one? So you see how it adds just a little bit of kind of that aged factor, a little bit of depth, a little shadowing almost down in those low spots. So that's the next piece that I'm doing, and I'm going to do that around all my moldings. You can still see the purple, so it's not overtaking that in any way, but I'm adding a little bit of age. All right, so, you know, just because, hey, overkill, we are going to add a little bit of Shipwrecked as well from DIY. Now this is a dark, deep, intensive turquoise wax. So I am just going to be using it in very small amounts. So you can see that I'm offloading it into the lid. And I'm just kind of using it here and there, just as a little touch to add back a little bit more of that blue, kind of complement that blue a little bit. So you can just see a little bit of it down along here, you know, kind of up along here-ish, just in little bits. So I'm not using a lot, but we're just adding another little layer. And I'm thinking after this one, there's only one left. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, will this ever end? Yes, yes, we're in the home stretch. All right, final touch, I swear, is to add some gold. It needs a little bit of bling. You know, if it's got that kind of Moroccan feel, I mean, gold is pretty much a given. So DIY has two gold products. One is Golden Ticket, which is a liquid patina. And one is Golden Rule, which is a buttery, soft, golden wax. So the nice thing about this is because it's not as liquid as the Golden Ticket, is that I can get some on my finger and I can just rub it in kind of lightly in spots that I want to highlight. So gives me a little bit of control. I mean, certainly I can take a brush and paint it all over if I wanted. But here, I just want to use it as almost like a gilding wax, right? I just want to get it in spots, get it just highlighting some of those elements. So I'm just looking at touches of it. Because it's so light, it's so buttery soft, it doesn't hide the other colors. It's laying down over top of them, but you can still see all those other colors through it. So some of the other gilding products are quite heavy, and I use them, and you know, I have no problem with continuing to do that, but they're a lot thicker than this is. And really, I mean, this seems like such a tiny jar, but okay, I haven't even made a dent in it, right? You can't even tell that I've taken any out because I'm just kind of brushing my finger across the top and getting some on to my fingertip and then painting it over my piece. So let me get this little medallion down here and kind of show you that section so you can see that gold on those pieces, but it still has all that color. And it's just gonna, again, give it a little bit more age, a little bit more character. It's definitely got more of that Moroccan kind of boho finish to it with adding in that metallic. So I'm gonna finish that up, and I'm then going to let the piece dry before I give it a little bit of a buffing, right? That these waxes are still soft, and my powders stayed on there because I was brushing them down into the wet clear wax that I had added on. So I just want that wax to firm up a little bit before I give it a bit of a buffing, which is gonna just give it a nicer, smoother look and feel to it. But you can already see it's getting some of that gold shimmer. It's getting a little bit more of that aged patina look, which is definitely what I wanted. So, you know, I'll take some closer pics of this so that you can see it and you can see all those colors peeking through. But remember what we started with. We started with that plain glass carafe from which thrift store? From the thrift store, from the Value Village. So look at what some molds and a bit of paint and some wax can do. I mean, obviously, if you don't like bolder colors or you don't like pink, then this is not going to be for you. But I want you to imagine it in the colors that do appeal to you. You can see, I mean, you can take this in so many different directions. It all just started with a glass bottle, some molds, and some clay. The paint, the color choices, the detailing choices, that's what makes it uniquely you more than anything else. This is an idea that can fit into any decor. I hope that maybe doing it in a way that's a little bit more colorful has inspired you to perhaps give it a try. As always, the paint and the supplies, the waxes that I've shown you are all available on the website, queenbeecreationshome.com. If you give it a try, let me know. Certainly let me know what you think of the video. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care.